1985, I had a lot of disappointments in my acting career and a lot of heartache in my love life. I experienced a lot of things that devastated me emotionally and psychologically. My heart was broken. But I overcame all that through an encounter with the Almighty God. And then shortly after, I was fully healed. I was laughing again, inspired again, full of hope and full of joy. So by 1989, it was time to star in my own life by moving to a remote tropical island in the Caribbean. So I suddenly found myself on a plane to a tropical island with only $200 in my pocket and my guitar. I lived in the St. John Virgin Islands. I lived in this little pink cottage on the ocean. I had hummingbirds outside my window and sunflowers and a view of the Caribbean Ocean. So we'd say, "Hi, Fly," and he really loved that. That's why he called himself Fly. Because anytime we'd see him, we'd be like, "Hi, Fly." It was very, very funny. It was like hanging out with Robin Williams. I mean, it was really like that. He was just really quick-witted, crazy, funny, kind of goofy, but very sharp. Fly, he made me a heart-shaped table out of plywood, and I painted it. So my cottage was pink and purple and like mint green, like aqua color. Just really like a good-hearted person. So I had really good company. He was a really special person. He had like crazy red hair and, you know, he was like mostly Irish, I think. But he had this crazy curly red hair. He looked like Carrot Top. He did. He looked like Carrot Top. We used to call him Carrot Top sometimes. And he would sit on the beach drinking eggnog. Like, who sits on the beach drinking eggnog? His laundry was labeled nuclear waste, and he lived in the woods. So you have this 30-year-old guy living in the woods. He's from Connecticut. And the reason he ended up in the Caribbean is because he was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and they were going to operate. But he believes he didn't have a brain tumor, and that if he did, he could heal himself. So he said, all I have to do is go after my dream. And this is a true story. And he did move to the Caribbean. He was there already 8 years, and there was nothing wrong with him. The only problem he had is that he had dyslexia, and he was very insecure, and he didn't know how to read and write, and he had trouble in school as a teenager. So, you know, he didn't have a good relationship with his family because they worked in a nuclear power plant. And, you know, Fly was this kind of hippie guy who loved nature, and he wanted to protect the planet. And he didn't fit in. He didn't fit in with his family. He didn't fit in with society. So he moved to the Caribbean, and he had a hammock between two trees in the forest. And and that's where he slept, and he had a mosquito net over it. And for a coffee table, he had this big piece of, what do you call it, tree trunk? And he had like this old mirror hanging on the tree, so he would shave and brush his teeth. And so he didn't have any bills. He didn't live in a house. He didn't have any electricity. He used like a lantern for light at night. And he was a simple guy. What he did for a living, he would make hats out of the palm leaves and sell them to tourists. He would climb up trees and grab coconuts and take a machete and just like chop them open. He was like a real jungle guy because he had been there for 8 years. He would go to the local cafe, which was right on the water, and you know, it was kind of like a dive bar because they sold liquor at night, and well, actually they sold liquor 24 hours. But they would serve breakfast there, and he would have his breakfast there, and he would rack up a bill. and then he would, at the end of the month, pay it. So that was the only expense he had. We became really good friends, and he was actually, we were like this, and we would hang out together all the time. And he had this little dinghy boat. It was just like this little metal boat with like, at the front of the boat he'd have a feather for good luck. And so we would ride around and go to these different deserted islands and go through these caves in the water. The caves would actually breathe. Of him because he was like, don't ever take a picture of me because that's like photographing my soul. So he's very superstitious about stuff like that. But he had a t-shirt. It was a tie-dye t-shirt that said, you know, Jesus on it. And so while other people were struggling to like get on their surfboards or their, what do you call it, parasails, he was like, he's just floating around, you know, like, you know, he would make his own wind. He was like supernatural. He was just very spiritual, supernatural guy. So, and his family would come down to visit, and they were like really strange people. They were like Archie Bunker and Edith Bunker kind of people. And they just worked in a nuclear power plant, you know. And what he told me, all they do on the nuclear power plant is play cards. They would sit there all night and all day and play cards because they were just there to make sure that there was no nuclear leakage. Like, that was their job. So they had nothing else to do but that, so they would sit there and play cards. And when they came to the Virgin Islands to visit Fly, all they would do was sit in my cottage and play cards. They didn't go to the beach. Like, why don't you just stay home in Connecticut? Like, you're in the Caribbean, and you're, like, sitting in my cottage like day and night. Like, I was like, hey guys, I have to go to sleep. Go back to your hotel room. Yeah. They were just like sitting in the house playing cards. The same thing they did in the nuclear power plant. One night, all these bats flew into my window. I was like freaking out. And I didn't want to get bit by a bat. So that only happened once, but it was really creepy. So that, oh, we had scorpions. Now the scorpions weren't poisonous, but they were, I don't like bugs. I don't mind the katydids because they're pretty green grasshopper types. They like to go on your sneakers and your shoes. I wore mostly sandals, so I wasn't too worried about it. But they like to go on your bed. They like dry sheets, you know. Clean, dry sheets. I really like that. So I'd have to always check my bed for scorpions. I spent most of my time with Fly because I was kind of rejected from the community because I didn't drink alcohol. So, so Fly was my friend. But we would have great adventures together. We would go to all sorts of different little deserted islands. One island where supposedly a really rich guy lived. He had his own private island. And the rich man who lived there, he had imported these donkeys from Italy. And they were from a monastery. And they shaved the symbol of the cross on the back of the donkeys. So all these donkeys had like shaved crosses on their backs. And so where do these donkeys come from? He says they imported them from Italy. So there was like a whole herd of donkeys. We had a lot of goats on the island, a lot of chickens, but and we also had some deer. So people would spot deer, like swimming from island to island, and they would spot them in the woods. But no, I did see a deer once. But we had iguanas, And those things were crazy because they looked like prehistoric dogs. And they were big. Some were like this big, some were this big. And they loved the color red. And I didn't know this, so I would be on the beach and this big iguana would be like the size of a big dog would be like coming at me. And I'd be running away with my towel and all my stuff. And then I would go to another part of the beach and then the same like iguana would be like coming after me again. One of the locals would yell out, "Get rid of the towel!" And I was like, why? He likes the towel because it's the color red. They love the color red. I'm like, oh, shoot. So I got rid of the towel and he went right after the towel. But only a local would know that. So I was like running around for like a half an hour trying to get away from this iguana. So it's pretty frightening because I don't like things with scales on it. Like I don't like alligators or snakes or anything like, I don't like anything prehistoric looking. So if you ever go to the Caribbean and iguanas like running after you, like anything red bathing suit, forget it. Don't wear a red bathing suit because you'll never get rid of those guys. Oh my God. Yeah, the iguanas. And then there were chickens. They didn't bother anybody. But in the morning, the rooster would wake me up. So at 5 o'clock in the morning, I didn't need an alarm clock. All I had was like the sun coming up. It was still dark, you know. It was still dark enough to sleep, but you'd hear the rooster go, cock-a-doodle-doo! It was really loud. The rooster's waking me up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I woke up with a rooster, cock-a-doodle-doo, cock-a-doodle-doodle-doodle, cock-a-doodle, cock-a-doodle-doo. And we have a lot of goats on the island. So there was, the gate was broken on my property. So the goats would come in and go under my house, like a whole herd of goats. And they would bang against the, you know, the wall of the house, like the whole herd. And I'd hear like these goats banging on my, you know, under my property. And so they had to fix the gate to keep the goats out. So you don't want goats on your property. And then they crap all over your property, and then you don't want that. And then there was Roy. Roy lived on top of the mountain, and he was from like the south, and he like, Whitney, let me come over to your house, and you come over to my house, and we play guitar. And I like, Roy, it's not a guitar, it's a guitar. Oh, it's a guitar. And I was like, he was definitely a southern guy. And then there was like this guy named Joe, and he was from Brooklyn. So he was on the run from like the police, you know, from in the States, because he would steal. Like he was like Italian. I wouldn't say he was a mafia, but he would steal. Like, I don't know, he was on the run for something. But he would always steal from people on the island. But we all knew it was him. It was like, that's Joe. So if your boat was stolen, or if your tools were stolen, or if your, you know, jigsaw was stolen, it was Joe. So we'd go to Joe's house and we'd be like, Joe, give back the car, give back the boat, give back the hammer, give back the lawnmower. Like, he would just take anything and use it, and then people would have to go back and get it because they knew it was Joe. So Joe from Brooklyn. And like, Joe didn't have a pair of swimming trunks. So he put on my Tweety Bird shorts. So I had like he's pink shorts with yellow Tweety Birds all over them. So he's like standing on the beach, you know, this big tough guy from Brooklyn, like looked like he's from the mob. And he's like wearing my Tweety Bird shorts. Oh, and this other guy, he was rich from the States. I don't know what he did. He had some kind of company in like San Francisco or something. Like, and so he built his house on a hill on the Virgin Islands, and it was like, it looked like a castle. And in the castle walls, he had all these crystals, like amethyst crystals and quartz crystals and tourmaline crystals, like embedded in the cement. And then he had these gargoyles embedded in the cement. And then on top of the castle, he had like a giant chessboard. And all the chess pieces were made of coral. So you'd have these big, they were light, you know, because they were made of coral, and they were very light. So you'd have these chess pieces moving around that were made of coral on this giant chessboard, black and white slate. And then when you look out, you'd see like this expansive view, and you see all the ocean and the British Virgin Islands in the distance. And I was like, oh my God. And he would have these like parties up there in his house. And his house had a winding staircase. It looks like a real castle, you know, like a castle tower. And yeah, it was like amazing. Like, you'd run into some amazing stuff. And then we'd be laying on the beach, and all of a sudden this helicopter would go by, and it would drop this big bag of stuff. We don't know what was in it. Well, we did know what was in it. Like, they would just drop pot in the middle of, like, big, and so I don't know where they dropped it. Like, you don't want to go near that thing, because you don't know who's involved with that stuff. Guy at the jewelry store, they had this crystal meditation jewelry store, and this guy had a long beard, and he had long fingernails, and he was like, really, he was selling like meditation stuff, like crystals and, you know, jewelry, magic wands and everything, but he was the meanest guy you ever met. Anybody who worked for him, he was just like mean. He's supposed to be this peaceful meditation guy who's into, you know, love and peace and harmony and meditation and crystals and magic wands and like all this stuff. That's what his shop sold. But he was just like a mean guy. And he was very weird looking. Like, he looked like a wizard. What I did for a living, I would work at the crystal meditation jewelry shop for that mean guy who owned it. And and also I would paint, I didn't work there too long, these brown wooden pods, and they had like seeds in them, and they were dry. So you pick them off the tree and you shake them, and so they were like maracas. You know, people would play in the Carribbean bands and in the carnivals with them. And I painted them all different colors, and they had all different designs on them, and they were very whimsical and full of color. And I put them all in a basket, so it would be this bouquet of great color. And I would sell them to the tourists for like, I think like $6 a piece or something. So I tried to sell as many as I could, and I would sell them to the stores too, and they would sell them to the tourists. And the town was only 2 blocks long. It wasn't a big town. It was like really tiny. I would also paint and try to sell my paintings. We had art shows, and I would have my pastels in the local art gallery. We only had one local art gallery. Michael and Jane's wedding, and that was pretty cool because they went on this boat. It looked like Popeye's, like, it looked like a barge, you know, like Popeye boat with the smokestack. And this guy, Bucky, he looked like Popeye. We were going to their wedding. They were going to get married on this island. I forget the name of the island, but there was this place called Foxy's. It's very famous. All the celebrities go there. There's just this guy who has a bar called Foxy's in the British Virgin Islands. So I think it was on that island because I had been to Foxy's a few times. But when we went to the wedding, it was on the beach. It was very simple. Like, she had a very simple white dress on, and he had a Hawaiian shirt on. And she had like bougainvillea, you know, fresh flowers in her hair. It's a very simple wedding, but coming back, we're on this like Popeye tugboat, and there's like all of a sudden a storm happens. So when we saw it coming, it was like you see this wave of water coming, like, you know, like a cascade, like a waterfall. And it's so dramatic and so intense, and it comes out of nowhere. So we're like, oh no, we're like gonna get stuck in this rainstorm. And we're trying to get back as soon as we can, but it hits us. It hits us hard, and we're like, ah! And I'm soaking wet, and I have this beautiful silk dress on, and I'm just drenched. And the boat's going like this, and the lightning's coming down, and boat, and we're like trying to hold on. And then there's like people who have, like, they actually go down there and look for buried treasure, because there are shipwrecks from the 1800s, from the 1600s, like sometimes coins, like from the 1600s, from a ship, you know, some Spanish ship or something, actually washes up on shore. And people don't realize that this is true, that this actually happens. There are people down there looking for buried treasure. And it's so exciting because, like, they're like real pirates, you know? They're like ARG kind of pirates, because they're like, you know, people you meet like from Hell's Angels kind of people, and they're really tough and gruff. And like one guy, he actually like took a soda pop bottle and he opened it with his teeth. Oh, like, you're the kind of guy I really like to hang around with. He opened the soda bottle. He didn't have like a can opener on him, so he just opened it up with his teeth. And I'm like, where did you come from? Like, how long have you been here? He goes, I've been here for about... He talked like Jimmy Stewart, too. He's like, I've been here for about 10 years. So what'd you do back in the States? He said he built bridges. So he would go underwater and repair and build bridges. You know how dangerous that is? Like, you know, New York City, the Brooklyn Bridge, if he had to repair it, he would go down there and repair it. He would go down in the water in a wetsuit, you know, the whole paraphernalia, and he'd go there and fix your bridge. Like, those people are tough. My screenplay is called From Out of Nowhere, and it's based on my life living in the Virgin Islands. And it's a whimsical, magical comedy. The main character, instead of naming it, you know, after myself, I named it after a fictitious character named Lisa, because I felt more comfortable writing and more free writing about someone else than myself, even though it was about myself. If you want to check out my screenplay reviews, it's on my website, whitneydelise.com. And you can look under the heading Screenplay. I'll put a link so you can find it. It's based on a true story. Not all of it's true, but the crazy parts, the ones you wouldn't think are true. Because, you know, life is stranger than fiction. It really is. Oh my God. Yeah, the iguanas.